with some balance there. Hey gang, my name's Andy, Director of Leadership Development here at the school. Glad you guys could make it out. Don't forget the receipt, or you might need that for something, you know. You turn in all your expenses. I am really excited about today, but as we get back into the Institute, this is our first one of the semester, I wanted to just remind us quickly, again, why we're here. And the reason we're here really is because there is a massive leadership gap in the pipeline to local church leaders, right? If you work in a local church, and a lot of you do, then you've experienced this already. You need someone to fill that slot. You're looking to hire somebody. You cannot find them. Somebody that's qualified, ready to go and lead in that role. And that is happening in churches across America all the time. And we have decided at Nebraska Christian that we can do a little something about that. And so we try to find students who are called, gifted, and passionate about ministry, have them come to Nebraska Christian and train them up, not just academically, not just spiritually, but in leadership as well. Those are our 3 development pathways here at the school. And as we do that, they come out the other end as they graduate, ready to go. And so part of getting them ready to go on the leadership side is the Institute for Church Leadership. It's an honors program here on our campus that also puts on events like these today. So I just thought it was worth kind of remembering what we're doing here. If you're a local church leader, be sure to connect with the students at your table if there are any. Get to know them a little bit. And if you are a church leader, please. I think this leadership gap is on us as church leaders. We need to find and call the next generation and train them up, give them opportunity to lead, and then maybe if it works out, send them to a place like Nebraska Christian College. There's no place like Nebraska Christian College, I like to think. So send them to us, and we'll help train them up and send them back to you in the local church to continue to lead there and advance the kingdom. So be thinking about students and young people in your ministry areas that might need to get that kind of call from you, the person in ministry, because if we don't ask ourselves the question, who's the next me? Who's the next you? That's going to lead in your local context. If we're not thinking about that, we're only kind of prolonging the problem that we have right now with the leadership gap. So would you partner with me in doing that? That's what we're here for, and that's why we do this. You guys, I'm super excited about today. Frank Bealer is with us. He has this book titled The Myth of Balance. I've read it. I participated in the online Facebook Live group that he's done around this topic. It's fascinating material. Frank, formerly on staff at Elevation Church as the family pastor over 18 campuses, but currently works at the reThink group, better known for Orange, the model and curriculum that they produced there, as the executive director of leadership development, as well as the CEO of Phase Family Centers, which you may hear more about in the future someday. But please give a big Institute welcome to Frank Bealer.
Thanks, Andrew. So, I used to have it all figured out. That's good news for you. I used to have it all figured out. As I was putting myself through college, I went to the University of Tennessee in business, and I got a few scholarships, but spent most of my time paying for the bills for college by being a tow truck driver. And I know what you're thinking. He looks like a tow truck driver. This makes sense. And I'll never forget this incredible night as a tow truck driver where I had the privilege of getting a call around 2 in the morning because there was a DUI on a rural road in the backwoods of Tennessee, and there was a Tennessee highway patrolman waiting on me to come get this car that's now sitting in the middle of this road. He does not want to be there, and he does not want to wait on me. But I got to go get the truck and get there, so I arrived with my rollback. So that's the big flatbed where you pick the whole car up, put it on the back, and take off. And when I get there, he already doesn't like me. First of all, I'm young, I'm slow apparently, I drove as fast as I could, and he doesn't want to be there. And so he is pulled behind the car with his lights on so nobody runs into this car on this non-backlit road. This is really important. So I back up my truck, get out quickly, hook this thing up, because I'm getting good at this, I've been doing it for a while, hook this thing up and pull up and start moving the car to the top. Well, he's already done. He goes and gets in his car and is literally just waiting on me to finish. I raise the car up the ramp, it hits the ramp, starts to tilt up, gets all the way up on the bed, and right as I'm getting ready to switch, I hear a pop. And the car starts to go backwards, rolling down this ramp directly at the police car. This is a problem. But don't worry, I'm 21. I have it all figured out. So how do you stop a car that's going toward a police car when the chain connected doesn't work? You step on the cable and you slow it down with your feet, because I weighed like 150 and I'm going to slow this thing down. And I'm standing there considering, what am I going to do now? I hear another pop. The car comes to a stop. The cable gets pulled tight. I'm standing on the cable. It shoots me up in the air. I do a literal backflip, land on my stomach. I am in complete shock and grateful that I haven't hit this cop car. The police officer missed the entire thing, had no clue what had happened, gets out of his car and asks me what in the world I'm doing down on my stomach. I said, I'm just checking to make sure everything's good, like everything's fine. I check everything again, get this car built up, and take off as quickly as possible. And it was this experience that was pretty miserable for me. It was like one of those things where like nothing was going right, your heart's racing, you're trying to figure it all out. But when I talked to my boss about it the next day, trying to make sure this never happened again, he pointed out a few things that I could have done differently, because he saw this kind of thing coming. He could have shown me some little things that would have made a really big difference. And so what I'd like to talk a little bit about today is that at my time at Elevation, many of you may know of our church. We love what God's done through our church. We've been blown away by what God's done. We're 12 years old as of yesterday, and we're really, really thankful. 18 campuses, 20 bajillion people attend church. Like, it's awesome. We love it. But I'll tell you this, at the same time of that happening, it's a little overwhelming. We never felt staffed enough, never felt like we had enough volunteers, and we're all going as fast as we possibly can. But in the midst of that, we build a family and a community. We work out together. We do fitness challenges together. Our families just grew to know each other. And so we found a way to navigate. In the midst of all the stress, all the tension, it still was fine because we were family. But along the way, I knew that something had to give. We had 3 kids at the time. We now have a 4th. We adopted a young man that's 15 about a year ago. He joined our family. That's been a whirlwind of a change. We have another 15-year-old now. We have an 11-year-old. Those are all boys, and a little girl who's 10. And in the midst of all that, I'm like, the way we're running life right now doesn't seem to be right. My wife was over all the children's ministry. As Andy said, I was over kids, students, adult small groups, and part of the creative staff for the whole church. On the executive team, there's a lot to do. Like, it's not like we were bored, right? And so I'm trying to figure out how can we manage our life a little better. So I start to reach out to some leaders that I really admire and say, help me know how to balance all this better. But I quickly discovered a pattern. The people that seem to have good marriages and good families and seem to be thriving for a long time in ministry never use the word balance. That wasn't their solution. They weren't like, well, you just got to get everything all evened out. It's like, well, that's a problem. So if it's not balance, what is it? What's going to make a difference? If I can't find balance, and the reason my book is called The Myth of Balance is because what I found out was that the idea of balance is a mythical beast. No one's ever seen it before. And those people that said that they've got just an eye shot of it, they saw it that one time, the picture's really blurry, and they can't really give me a clear answer of what exactly happened. And so it reminds me very much of a Yeti, right? People say that Yetis exist, but all I've seen are blurry sketch pictures that could just be an overweight, hairy guy. Like, that's what we got to work with. And so when they would describe balance, they'd be like, well, you just got to get your time right, and you got to communicate well with your spouse. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but that's not really helpful. Like, tell me how balance really looks for you. And so if it wasn't balance, it was like, what is it that works? And so what I found was that they all had their different approaches, but they had a pattern of a way they were managing time that was really unique and remarkable, but they didn't have language around it. And so I know as a family, if something's really going to take hold in our culture, if I was going to be able to help the staff at Elevation navigate better, I was going to have to figure out how to put this into words that would be a little more helpful. So this book actually was never intended to be a book. It was a leadership teaching and elevation because I was doing something wrong. Now, I'll be honest with you, on any given day, I can move people. God has given me a gift to communicate really well, to be energetic, and I can get you fired up. We can go do something. I could probably work with this room and get half of you convinced that we go out right now and shovel snow for fun. Like I'm wired to be that guy. And so here's what would happen. I would get in front of our staff and be like, hey guys, I know all of you are maxed out and full on and really busy right now, but in just 2 months, we've got a 10-night revival. All hands on deck. This is going to be awesome. And it all immediately be like, oh, I don't even know how to manage life now, and now you want me to do a 10-night revival. How are we going to manage all this? And my response was to turn the passion knob more. And I would get them more excited and more energized, and I could get them to leave the room excited about what was coming. But I wasn't helping their family. I wasn't helping them navigate the conversations of missing a sporting event or how they were going to navigate those 10 nights when everything seems like they're on the ropes already. Some of the ladies in our ministry were homeschooling or investing in their kids. It's like, yeah, I guess you just don't do it for a couple weeks. I don't know. Like I was giving no help. I was just getting them more excited. And I realized as a leader that just because I'm good at it doesn't mean that's what I need to do for those I lead. I've got to get refocused. And so I'm feeling a little touch of difficulty for my wife and I, figuring out the rhythm of all this stuff and all these opportunities and speaking and traveling, and there's just so much demand. And then I'm seeing it in my staff going, I think I'm doing this wrong. I think this isn't the way that we're supposed to lead. And so I started to work on an idea that I want to share with you. But before we get to that idea, I want to make sure we understand what's really happening with our schedule now. Because I would say that most of you in this room, if I walked up to you and said, how's your day today? How are you doing? Many of you would use the same word, busy. It's busy. It's like, well, I don't know how to help you with busy. I don't know what to do with busy. And the reality is some of you would say it's busy and you're not really busy today, but you're busy this week or you've been real busy last week. And so you say you're busy because if you're not busy, you're failing. Right? If you're not busy, it's like, what are you doing? Like, how weird is it? I said this to Andy yesterday. He looked at me. He doesn't even know how he looked at me, but it was amazing. We get in the car, and he said, so what are you feeling? You want to go get something to eat? You want to go home or go back to the hotel and get some work done? And I said, I'm actually pretty caught up on stuff. I can do whatever you want. And he looked at me like, I don't know if anybody's ever said that to me before. I don't know what to do with this. And literally, we pulled up to a red light and sat there for 2 minutes because we couldn't figure out where to go. He was just kind of like, I don't know. Like you're supposed to tell me you're hungry or you're in a hurry or I got to get you to the hotel. And you're like, hey, whatever you want to do, I'm all yours. And so it was just kind of this weird moment. We don't talk that way, right? And so I want to go over what will feel like initially maybe a little bit of like a productivity lesson, but we're going to get to some stuff that really gets in our way when it comes to ministry, and then we'll do some Q&A. But this first idea is that there are 3 elements to everybody's calendar, and I want us to call it what it is and be honest. And the first one is the routine. I'm pushing the button, I promise. There it goes. Routine. We all have the routine. These are the commonplace tasks, the chores that must be done regularly. If you're in children's ministry, that means certain things have to be prepped, cut, copied, ready. If you're preaching, this means you've got to have a sermon ready. There are certain things that they are part of your schedule. They're part of your routine. You can't get away from them. They're your job. Now, I will tell you this. When I ask people to go through an exercise of figuring out their routine, we tend to lie to ourselves. We tend to say things like, well, I'm doing this temporarily, but we're planning on getting a hire, and then that's going to change everything, or I'm looking for a volunteer. I don't know. Until you solve it, this is your current reality. And so routine, a better way to say it would probably be, this is my current reality. This is what people are looking for me to do in a certain time. And I'll tell you this, if your schedule was dependent on that, you could all be balanced. I don't care how big a workload you carry or how many jobs you have. If it's just routine, then you can figure it out. All of you, you're sharp leaders. And so we approach our calendars like everything is routine. And we wonder why we can't get it balanced. Well, the reason we can't get it balanced is there's a couple other elements to our calendar. And the second one is this, the sporadic. These are the things that are appearing or happening at irregular intervals at time. Another way to say it, these are the things you know they're going to happen, you just don't know when they're going to happen next. Okay, let me give you an example at Elevation. My wife and I had the privilege of doing the final interviews at Elevation. So this was the last dinner to figure out if you were bat crazy or had issues before we offered you a job. This was an opportunity for you to ask us questions. Now, the problem with these interviews was a lot of people were flying in from out of town. Most of the time, nobody made it to the final interview. But when they did, it usually meant I needed to do an interview that night that I wasn't originally planning on. It was another night away from my family. Another night trying to figure out how to manage it. Did I know it was going to happen again? Yes, I do final interviews. Did I have a plan for when they were coming? The answer is no. So the sporadic are the things we know they're going to happen. If you're a part of any kind of church plant or younger church, your pastor's going to want to pull an all-nighter over something sometime soon when they get all excited and fired up about it. It's going to happen. It's going to affect your routine and your schedule. What are you going to do about it? Now, the third element is the unexpected, also defined very eloquently in Webster as not expected, okay? The unforeseen. There's a problem. The unexpected are the things that you cannot in any way predict. You do not know they're coming. You never planned on them. You never hoped for them. You never thought they would happen. Just 3 weeks ago, I got a phone call that my father-in-law had had a heart attack. He's in Pennsylvania, 15-hour drive if it doesn't snow 6 inches the day before. No option, we've got to go. No flights are flying in, we drive, right? I don't know how to plan for the unexpected. Many of us are operating our lives depending on whatever happens that day that derails us from our routine, those unexpected we can't predict. There's a problem in ministry. The problem is this: when we treat the sporadic and the unexpected the same, we remain in a state of chaos. So here's what happens. How many of you have people that walk into your door or call you up and they say, "You got a minute?" That happens. It's never a minute. That's a lie. It's a lie. So you got a minute. It's never a minute, and it happens. Do you know how we treat those? Like we never saw them coming. And yet you could, at your table right now as an exercise, write the people that are going to show up the next week and say, "Hey, you got a minute?" Like you know they're coming. And yet every time we're shocked that they come. In Atlanta, we had something unexpected happen about a year and a half ago. Our interstate collapsed. Did you guys hear about this? Like the entire interstate bridge fell. All 6 lanes, one direction, no longer present. A fire happened underneath. Literally looked like something out of a movie, like sliced like butter, our interstate. And suddenly, 6 lanes of traffic going into Atlanta go away. This is a problem. I will tell you this, my friends at Passion City Church, Louis Giglio and his crew, they did not have meetings going, "Hey guys, before we wrap up today, what do you think we should do if the interstate collapses? Like, what is our small group strategy to make sure our students make it to youth group on those nights when the interstate's collapsed?" Like, we don't do that, right? That would be ridiculous. There are things that are unexpected we can't plan for. But it's kind of funny, the way we operate our calendars and schedules, we put that interstate collapse and that, "Hey, got a minute?" in the same category. We have no idea what to do. We have no plan. We just take it. I don't know what to do. I either say no and I'm a jerk, or I say yes and I lose my time. I don't know what to do. Well, what if we decide in advance when we know the people that got a minute? One of the things I changed, this is just a little life hack for you. If you have a challenge with that, "Hey, got a minute?" Let me tell you the easiest solution for that. Remove all the chairs from your office. Then you have a real minute because they're standing and it's super awkward and you're sitting. It's like, "Yeah, I got a minute. What's up?" Cool. Like, what are they going to do, stay there forever? It's so awkward. It's so awkward. It works so well. The other thing is, yeah, got a minute? Yeah, I was getting ready to walk out and get a soda. So you literally walk out of your office, you've got a countdown clock. The time from you walking away from your office to get back to your office. You got a timer that you just set. And then when you get back, they don't have anywhere to sit anyway. It's like, hey, thanks so much for coming by and telling me about that. I'll see you later. That was a real minute, by the way. See, we can have a plan for those little things that seem to just devour our time. But we keep treating the sporadic and the unexpected the same. Now, here's the thing. When you signed up for ministry and started to dream about like what ministry could look like for you, you signed up for the sporadic. That's what you got in this for. You got in this for what I like to say is ministry is in the exceptions. That's why you signed up. You signed up to be there when people need you most. You want to be responsive. You want to have a plan, and you want to be there when they are at their most broken state. Because if any of you have been in ministry for any length of time, you know this, that their greatest need does not come when we're most available. We sign up for the sporadic, and yet we have no plan to care for them and respond. We just keep acting like everything is routine. And we walk around saying we're busy and we're overwhelmed and we're frustrated and there's no time to get it all done. Well, what if we recognized that the sporadic was coming? At Elevation, we like to do these mass baptisms where we give people an opportunity to respond, and we'll baptize thousands of people at a time. Okay? Interesting fact about that. Those thousands of people that we baptize, first of all, if we were surprised, that'd be a problem because we wouldn't have tanks and water and change of clothes and cameras and stuff like that. So we need to plan out the baptism, right? That makes sense, right? People do a good job of that stuff. When you have baptisms, you have plans, towels, things you need, right? But what about the children's ministry? Are they planning the fact that they're going to end up keeping the kids a little bit longer? And is their plan really just to make it to the point to where that kid who already feels like it's a long time because your pastor preaches too long and is already starting to melt down at the end, you're now making us keep them for an extra 20 minutes. So now what you're saying is, the best plan is you're going to have this incredibly powerful moment of baptism, something very spiritual and something very special for your family. And immediately after, I'm going to hand you a child that hates life. Like, can we not plan for this? Like, why are we surprised by the things we know they're going to happen? We just may not know when they're going to happen next. Or maybe it's a little last minute. But how do we plan for the things that we know they're going to come up? I think it changes the game if we're willing to say, okay, if ministry is exceptions, and I've signed up to be in ministry because of the exceptions, and I'll tell you, you would be hard-pressed to convince me you signed up for the routine of ministry. You signed up for the exceptions. The routine is part of your job, right? So if we signed up for the exceptions, how can we manage life different? Well, here's the thing. Our current solution is really, really bad for most of us. Do you know what our current solution is? It's 2 words, and we use them way too much. For friends, for family, for those we love and we invest in, our solution for the sporadic, the unexpected, the chaos of ministry is, I'm sorry. That's our solution. I can't manage it. I can't stay on top of it. So my solution for you is to simply say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I can't be there. I'm sorry I didn't make it tonight. I'm sorry, once again, the church wins. And at some point, when you have kids and you get a little older, that I'm sorry works for a little while. And then it doesn't work anymore. There's got to be a better plan. There's got to be a better way. So if we say I'm sorry isn't okay, then something's got to give, right? So my friend who we mentioned, so Kerry Newhoff is my best friend. He's a great leader. I love him so much, and we text daily. He truly is my best friend. And Kerry has a flaw. And it drives me absolutely bonkers. You guys may not know this flaw, but it's actually a flaw with all Canadians. Are any of you from Canada? I need to know that. Any of you from Canada? Okay, good. So we can regularly insult them. It's fine. They're not here to defend themselves. they say I'm sorry even when it's not their fault. They say I'm sorry way, way, way too much. Like, I will call Carrie and tell him it was a really tough day and everything that was wrong, and he's like, I'm sorry, buddy. And I'm like, no, you're sorry, but like, you didn't do anything. And he's like, but I'm just sorry. I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do? And I'm sorry. I'm like, I don't need you to do anything. Why do you keep saying I'm sorry? It's like this thing with Canadians. I don't know why. But I will say this, their crime rate is way lower in Canada than it is the U.S. So I think it may have something to do with the fact everybody just keeps saying, I'm sorry, it's my fault. Officers like, who caused the accident? They're all like, I'm sorry. I don't know what to do with that. I think insurance claims, my theory is, I've never looked into this. I used to be in insurance. Here's my theory. My theory is that insurance claims in Canada are always split right down the middle even because nobody will ever accept full blame. They all just take it all. So that's my theory. I don't know if it's true or not. But this whole idea of I'm sorry, that's a good thing, right? We want to lower crime rate. It is not a good thing to say I'm sorry more to our families. It's not a win. Saying I'm sorry more doesn't really help. And so if I'm sorry is not the solution, what kind of gives? What needs to change? And what I'd like to share is, I believe as we get ready for a plan for the sporadic, I want to point out 3 lies that ministry leaders tell themselves. And there are 3 lies that no matter what your season of life is, that I want to just kind of challenge you with right now. And we'll wrestle with these for a few minutes, and then we'll kind of dive in on this plan. The first one is this. This is just a busy season. Seasons change. Have you noticed? Like, that's the whole idea of a season. You know, there's 4 seasons in most of our states in America. So these seasons must change. If you have 2 seasons, and those seasons are getting ready for the busy season and being in the busy season, that is not a season. That is your reality. That is your routine. We say this is just a busy season to make us feel better, that somehow things are going to change all on their own. I don't know how that happens, guys. I haven't figured it out. I mean, maybe for some of you, that changed. I mean, I guess God could change it and make me lose my job. That would be a change in season that I wouldn't be expecting, right? But in light of my present circumstances, the season that I'm in, if I'm just like, this is just a busy season, my first question to you is, what's going to change the seasons? And I rarely get good answers from ministry leaders. There's no break coming. They just on to the next thing. Have you noticed Sunday comes every 7 days? Like there's like it doesn't stop. And so if that's a reality for us, I think we have to have a better plan than to just kind of blow it off as this is just a busy season. I put this down. There's a real danger when you have only 2 seasons. You're in the middle of something big or getting ready for something big. Here's the second lie that we tell ourselves right here. Next week will be better. What changed to make it better next week? Are you just assuming? Here's the thing. When we say next week will be better, what we're really saying is that all the sporadic stuff in ministry, all the exceptions, aren't going to happen next week. That was reserved for this week. Now, here's what I know. The same sporadic thing probably won't happen. The family that suddenly needs you to come to the hospital, that won't be the phone call you get next week. That's the phone call you got this week that threw everything out of whack. But next week, there'll be something else. Because if we pray that next week is better, what we're literally saying to God, I believe, saying, God, don't give me too much opportunity for ministry. I need a light week. I don't feel like that's a really good strategy. Like, can you just make it where it all fits nice and neat, God, for this week? Because I don't want to be thrown off by anything. It doesn't feel like a plan. It just feels like something that we say that makes us feel better. The third idea is this. I'm going to skip past that. There we go. Everyone understands. God gives you the authority to act on his behalf. You're ministers of the gospel. But I think a lot of times we're creating bad excuses for something that God has done because we're saying, well, God wants us to do this, so I'm just not going to be able to step in on this, or I'm not going to be able to show up for my family. And if we're not careful, we actually create division instead of health. So if we say everyone understands, let me tell you this. How many of you are currently in college here? Can you raise your hand for just a second? Let me see your hands. Awesome, awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me give you some bad news. I'm here full of bad news today. I just want to be helpful. If I could just make you feel heavy, then Andy can say anything nice, and you'll love him more. It's fine. At some point, you're going to explain to your family, if you haven't already, why Christmas must now look different. And they will not understand. They will not understand why we can't do Christmas Eve way we've always done Christmas Eve. The extended family won't understand. Maybe your parents will be supportive for a year or two, and then they'll be a little frustrated too. It's just difficult. They don't understand. But now here's the good news. I need them to respect my decision. I need them to encourage and comfort and kind of send me out and be positive. But I've got to do my part to make sure that's okay. And so when you call this year for Easter or Christmas, it's not enough to assume they understand why you can't be there or you can't do the things that they would like for you to do, that they feel are family things that we should do, those expectations. We have to always, always, always give vision. Instead of doing that, I'm doing this because I believe God wants me to do this because this leads to this. We can't assume that our family or friends understand why we choose one thing over another because they don't get all the puzzle pieces. They don't see how it plays out. They may see that you're filling a function in the church. You're just watching kids. You're just working with students. Can't they find somebody else for that? And you're like, no, but those kids and students, they don't just need another leader. They need me as the leader because I'm the only consistent thing they got in their life because everybody else is inconsistent, including their parents, but they just need to know that I'm going to be the one that's there when they need it most. I've got to be consistent. That's why I'm there every week. You can't say that to them just once. It's a pretty compelling conversation. But we have to remind them of that. We have to invest in that. So we tell these lies to ourselves. It's just a busy season. Next week will be better. But really, we're not changing anything. We're just wanting it to magically get better. Like it's just going to get easier. Our boss is going to hire more people, and that's just going to fix it all, and it's going to be great. I will tell you this. Before I rolled off staff at Elevation, I don't know, I had 3,000 volunteers in kids and students, family ministry, 3,000 volunteers. If you ask any one of our campuses, no one had enough volunteers. Like, it's just a reality. It wasn't poor mismanagement of them. We're just stewarding and building more relationships, caring for more people. Like, this idea of having enough volunteers, this idea of having it all solved, finally having the right hire. We used to have this name for a hire at Elevation, our team. They would say, well, so here's what we need. We need you to help us find someone that looks good, can sing, can connect with all ages, knows a lot about technology, can type really fast, also has a great degree in understanding theology, also can negotiate the deal with the school when they want to renegotiate the price for our rent. Can you find us that person? Well, we named that person. We called him Gallagher McBroom. And the reality is Gallagher McBroom doesn't exist. So it's like, oh, okay, so you want Gallagher McBroom. We're still looking for him. We can't find him anywhere. So here's the thing. Many of us are planning our schedules and the way we're managing our lives, waiting on Gallagher McBroom to show up. And I'm telling you, that ain't happening. Like that, if that's what you're waiting on and everything's going to get easier and better, you're going to be very disappointed and frustrated because we're going to get a hodgepodge group of leaders that God's going to entrust to our care, and we're all, despite ourselves, going to figure out how to do ministry together. That's what you get, but we plan our schedules as though this one person, this one hire, these 2 volunteers changes everything. It's just not true. So now that I've highlighted and frustrated pretty much everything that you do and the way you're managing your life, let's talk about this for a minute. Maybe we could take a little bit different approach. I think there's a way to manage your routine better, okay? And maybe we can talk about this in the Q&A. And by the way, I don't have a timer, so I really don't know what time I'm supposed to end. Like roughly 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 4 minutes? Cool, okay. Before Q&A? Cool, sorry. I see a clock, but it's not a timer, so I'm like, I don't know what time it started. Like, that's the thing. You guys ever felt that way? Have you ever got really angry at the production people and you wanted to throw a chair at them, and you realize that they're just awesome servants that have been here a really long time, and you feel bad about it, and then you're like feeling bad about yourself while you're on stage in front of all these people, and you're like bad about yourself, but they're expecting you to communicate. I'm just I'm just messing with you. I'm just having fun. Here's the thing. When it comes to your routine, I've found, and this shocked me, because I'm not wired this way, most people don't actually understand their routine. They don't know where the time goes. And I just assumed that most of us had a good idea. And what I found is that as soon as I ask people to go through an exercise where they write down where their time goes for a week, they're all surprised. They had no idea that it took so long to do this or so little time to do this. And so the first thing is you have to understand what your routine is really right now. Not when everything gets better in the future, but today. All that you're responsible for, all that's expected of you, all the things that have to be done, where do they fit? Now, the way I choose to do this, and Carrie does the same thing, we're real passionate about block scheduling, blocks of time in your calendar. My calendar is like super full, and I schedule calls with Andy, but that's only a 5-minute call. So how do I literally schedule 5-minute blocks for everything? No, I schedule chunks of time and say over the next hour, I'm going to follow up on email, I'm going to make these 2 phone calls, and I'm going to follow up on this expense report or whatever I got to do. I put blocks of time. Now, here's what I found out. When I built those blocks of time, I was horrible at estimating my time. The things I thought took 5 minutes to call with Andy takes 30 minutes, okay? Because I like to talk to him, and he makes me feel good, and so I just keep talking, and so he listens a lot. So like that's it. It just drifts, right? And so I know that, hey, can I get a minute? Never takes just a minute. So do I have room in the calendar to say, hey, you know what? I'm trying to knock out 3 things right now. A little while later this afternoon, I actually blocked aside some time for just this. Why don't you come back? We'll knock it out. I want to make sure I'm fully focused on you because I'm kind of worried about this right now. And now we manage our schedule a little differently. When you put your routine on paper and actually understand where time is going, then we have something to work with because that is your reality. Like, the other thing is, this is just a pet peeve of mine, I think you should only have one calendar. You only have one life. So I'm like, why do you have a calendar for family and a calendar for work and then this shared calendar with this one person? I'm like, you just have one life, and so it's all going to fit. And so I don't need color codes and pretty stuff. I just need a calendar to tell me what's going on in my life. The reason I get real passionate about block scheduling and scheduling out our time and understanding our routine is because only then do you understand the fallout of sporadic. Because here's the thing. Do you have a minute? Could be something that's really important, and you've got to make time for it. I just need to know, after I care for that person, what it cost me. And if it cost me, I was planning on finishing up my sermon slides at that time. That was my window of kind of making sure, looking over the sermon slides. I've now got to move that block somewhere. And now you start to see the fallout of the sporadic. It creates an urgency where we can manage that better. Okay? So then what I do is I actually go back in my calendar and say, now that time was given to so-and-so. I actually go backwards and be like, I got to move this over, and this goes here. The other thing I'll just tell you, you don't have to do this. My wife doesn't like this one. She adopts everything else, but not this one. I don't have a task list of any kind anywhere. Let me tell you why. Tasks take time. I don't have time on my calendar for a list. I have time to get things done. So if you ask me to do something, I put it on my calendar. Like I've got to send 2 text messages, one for Andy, one for Dylan, on my way to the airport. I put that on my calendar because I don't need a list of stuff to do because I don't know when I'll get around to that. I don't know how to manage that. So I put 15 minutes to do 2 little text messages and any dialogue that goes along with it on my ride to the airport. Now, I may do it when I get to the airport. I may do it while I'm on the plane. That's neither here nor there. It's there, and I've got to move it if I don't get to it because I want to follow through on my commitments. right? So when you have the sporadic come up, when your pastor says, do you have time to work on this project? When you start to schedule out your routine a few weeks in advance, here's what you'll find. The thing that you're available for today, and you have all the time in the world because right now you're on top of things or somebody else is preaching this weekend, so you got all this time because you're not worried about the message. And so you're like, I'm doing great right now. Yeah, bring it on, bring it on. If you can't put it on there as a recurring item, but you're committing to something that's recurring, that's a problem. What if the next time somebody asks you if you could take on a new responsibility, you didn't just look at, can I start it today, but when am I going to work on it next week or the next week or the next week? Am I going to carve out Monday mornings at 8 a.m. for 1 hour to work on that because that's the slot I have? Maybe it'll make us be a little more honest with our schedule and how we're operating our lives. So once you understand your routine, what it really is, what it really takes, what you really give toward watching Netflix series and binge watching, what it really takes for you to do these other things, I just want to know the cost. I don't care. You can watch a whole series. I don't care at all. I just want you to know what the fallout of that is. What did you move till later? What is moving to later that's now colliding with something else you moved to later? Now we have a problem, right? That's where the collision occurs when we overestimate what we can get done this day, this week. But I think if we get our arms around our routine and our schedule, we underestimate what we can do through our lifetime, right? We just got to look at it a little differently. So now, all I've said so far is how to be more productive, and here's some things I've started up. Let's talk about the sporadic, because it really is the problem. I genuinely think you could have balance without the sporadic. I said that earlier. But the sporadic is somebody really needs us right now. Something's going to happen. You're going to have a wedding to do, and that's going to require prep of the message, and then there's always travel logistics. You got to set aside some time for that. Then you got to set aside some time to actually go, and it's always more involved than you think it is. So go ahead and schedule some time with that. Well, what does your family do with that? And I run everything through the filter of my kids because that's just the season I'm in. So you can run it through whatever filter you want to. But let's go back for a second for the sporadic. Remember I talked about the interview earlier? And that was another night away from my family. And so if I already had 3 nights away, now I've got another night away from my family. And even though it's really important, and that hire will give great relief for our staff, I can't how do I do this? So here's what I did. I said, why can't we come up with formulas for this? So my phrase is, when this, then that. When this, then that. Not if, because I'm not talking about the unexpected. I don't know what to do with those things anyway. If the interstate collapses, I don't know what to do with that. But when, the things I know they're going to happen, I just don't know when they're going to happen next. When we have an interview, then my family goes to the same restaurant and gets an appetizer and a dessert. Now, if you have kids, you don't get anybody an appetizer or dessert. You get them out as quickly as possible without too many people around you being mad at you because you destroyed their restaurant when you're a family of 6, right? So on those days that we have an interview, picture the phone call. Before, hey, Layla. Hey, Daddy, when are you getting home? Actually, Mom's going to come with me, and we're going to do an interview tonight. And immediately you're like, you hear it. And she'll sit there, and because she loves me and she loves the church, she'll say, okay, I understand. Okay. I'm sorry, baby. It's okay. It's okay. I love you, Daddy. That's how my conversation used to go. It's a really bad conversation that you don't want to have a lot. Now picture this. Hey, Layla, I know it's 4 o'clock. Do you have an interview tonight? Because she's wanting to know, because she's wanting to go out to eat. This is like a thing. And the church, can we do more interviews? This is awesome. And now something that used to be, I'm sorry, and it's sad, is now we got a plan. And I want you to have an interview because I want to feel special. And what it did was, by taking them to the same restaurant, I had a countdown timer now for those dinners. Where before, when I was gone. They'd last 2.5 hours. Now I got, with my kids, they're a little older. I got an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes. That time bomb starts, chips and salsa start flying. And you're like, okay, we got to land this plane. But now it forced me to get in the conversation quicker. Still got home, still tucked in my kids. They're happy about that. They get to go out to eat. It's awesome. And so now one thing that I used to say I'm sorry for once a month just got taken off the list. In fact, We put it as part of our culture. And now, that's just whoever does the final interview, we put it in our budget that they get to take their kids along because it was so important that we find ways to remove having to say I'm sorry again, right? So it was a shift for us. So it didn't start that way. The budget was right here for a long time, and then we shifted that, right? For you to take time to look at your sporadic, say, what are the things that are throwing you out of whack? What are the things that are causing you to say I'm sorry to loved ones that you just know it's going to happen again? You just don't know when it's going to happen next. What if we said, when this happens, then we do this? When I have my regular call with my spouse or whatever, or when I'm traveling, or, oh, I have one. When I miss my kids' basketball games, or football games, or dance, or any of that stuff, I hate it. My son had a makeup game yesterday that I could have scheduled around and flew later, but it was made up last minute because of some snow in Atlanta. That's the thing. That's one thing unexpected. And so I missed a game. I don't want to miss a game. I want to be there for as many as I can. My kids know I can't be at everything, right? We got 4 kids. I couldn't physically be at everything. I'm pulled 2 places at once, right? But I'm always going to FaceTime in during the game, shout in the phone, like be silly. Mom's going to record some stuff for me. And his first call is to get me on the call to recap the game as a family, what went good and what went bad. So he knows that if I'm traveling, I'm going to do everything in my power to be on the family debrief when we get in the car after a game. So Micah knew. He knew Dad wasn't there. He had a solid game. He blocked the game-tying shot. 10 seconds left, jumps up, throws this guy's junk to the other side of the court. Like, it was awesome. It was awesome. It was a great video. I loved it. I loved it. But he saved the game. Like, they won by 2 points right at the last minute. That's awesome. And I saw it. I saw the video. I got to talk to him about it when he was still excited about it. It's so hard with kids, guys, to unpack it after the fact just isn't the same. And so it's like, why can't I do that? Why can't I always be intentional about that and figure that out? And you know what it meant this time? It meant I paid $5.99 for stupid internet on my plane for an hour window so that when she called, I could answer FaceTime on my computer and have my earbuds in so I could do that call. Because what that tells him is that even though I was in the air, celebrating his victory in his game and talking through that mattered. And so now my son knows, even though I'm not in the bleachers, I'm still doing my part to be a part of what's going on in our family, right? Finding those ways to go, well, when this happens, then here's my plan. I've got a rule. I'm not away from my kids the night after I travel, period. And that has ruined. That has eliminated lots of cool opportunities for me to speak at other churches, to do other cool events, to be a part of cool initiatives, to get my team together, to brainstorm something. Because I've just said, if I've been gone for a while, I'm not going to come back and just be gone in my city. Like, I've just decided that. So what that's done is it forces me to look at my calendar differently, schedule things differently. And last trip I made, I was at Fresh Life Church in Montana with the Luskos, 2 dear friends of mine. They're such an awesome family and church. And if you don't know Fresh Life Church, you got to check them out. God's doing some really cool stuff through them. But I was with the Luskos. I was gone 4 days. The next night, we had a meeting. Do you know what my change was? Well, instead of saying I'm sorry, I had a meeting at 5 a.m. the next day after traveling 4 days. That was not what was best for me. If I was going to hold to my promise to my kids, that was what was best for my family. So when I had when this, then that, this is my commitment to my family, then it determined how I operated my schedule. And was I a little tired when I got home? Yeah, I actually stopped and got espresso on my way home on that next night because I was like, the kids are going to be jacked and I'm not ready for any of this. But my kids know that I'm in their corner, right? Finding ways to create when this, then that strategies around the chaos of the sporadic changes everything. Now, here's the cool thing. The sporadic, if you can solve half of it, you're winning like nobody else. You're not going to think of everything and come up with scenarios of everything. We had one, my daughter, for the longest time, wanted to tag along with me to ministry events when I would do like a volunteer training or whatever, so I made one. When we have a training event, my daughter gets to choose the menu. So I'd have 4 restaurants that were all in our budget. You know, you can have a quarter of a sandwich from Subway. You can have a slice of pizza. You can have the Mexican food as long as we serve it and not you scoop your own because I can't afford that. And so like I had about 4 options. Layla got to pick it. You know what she would do? She would walk around during the beginning of a volunteer event like she cooked it all. I was like, you like that? Is that good? It's good? Yeah, okay. I wanted to make sure that you really like that. It became this thing. But the other option is what? She doesn't come with me, and I'm sorry. It's this trade-off of saying, don't try to figure it all out. I don't want you to feel the pressure of figuring it all out. I'm just telling you, if you start to put together some plans for a handful of things, you know what it communicates? It communicates to your family and your friends and your loved ones. They really do matter. And you've found a way to make them a priority in the midst of the chaos of ministry. And I've found lots of people that have failed tremendously at that. They've just not been able to ever find a way to communicate to their family that their family really matters in the midst of managing ministry. But I think it can be done, and it can be done really, really well. So if ministry is exceptions, all I know is that you have 2 options. Pray away the exceptions, and pray away the ministry. Say, God, just give me a routine week. I don't think that's awesome. Or we come up with a plan for the sporadic. So there we go.
So good. Thanks, Frank. No. It already was on. I turned it off.
Oh, that's a
now
thing.
I turned it back on.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. My fault, not yours. Hey, let's talk a little bit about those were family examples, and that's good. This is sort of for college students, this is a tuck this away, like that's going to be a thing. But let's talk a little bit about a college schedule too. Not the same sporadic. Now in ministry, okay, let's pause on, let's put a pin in that though real quick and talk about more sporadic, ministry sporadic examples. You did touch on a few. Yeah. What can they expect are going to be the sporadic things in ministry? Let's just name a couple more of them.
Sure. And you chime in too if you have ones, and we'll come up with scenarios. One of the biggest things is there's a perception that you have tons of time because you're young, and like, what else are you going to do? Just work harder and go harder. And like, to some degree, that's very, very true. But one of the tensions that I see that comes up in the sporadic is that leaders, college students specifically, let's break away from the sporadic for just a second. Leaders that have college-age students or young students or students leading in their church don't understand your schedule at all. And if you say you're busy, that's not helpful because I'm busy too. So one of the best things that you can do to help navigate and understand where the sporadic comes up is to define what your schedule really looks like now. And so when you're in residency, when you're trying to figure it out, defining where your ministry time's going, what's going to class, where your time's going. And if you're doing like 38 hours a week, I'm going to say do more. What's your problem? Let's figure it out. But at the same time, at some point you redline, and I don't know what to do with that because I don't remember, and I wasn't there, and my schedule was different than your schedule. I went to school in college Tuesday, Thursday, and worked full-time Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's all I know. But I also had this much ministry responsibility at that time. So I didn't feel that tension. So I did it fine. So my initial reaction as an executive leader in the church to college-age students is to go, just do more. You got all the time in the world. And sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But the challenge for you to find a way to communicate whether you have time or not is often not done well. That's the frustration. It's like, I'm really busy. And once again, I don't know what to do with that because I'm busy too. So I don't know how to help you fix that. I don't know how to manage that. I don't know how to manage what I ask you to do or not do because I'm in that tension. The other tension is there's great opportunities that you don't want to pass up any good opportunity, right? You want to be faithful for whatever opportunities come your way and be grateful. And I think that's great. You still have to play it out and figure out when you're actually going to get it done. It hurts you more to not finish a responsibility than it does to take on 5 and finish 4 of them. That's not a win. It hurts you less to just say, I can't do this one, or I've got to trade. And that becomes a great part of the conversation. I want to do this, but I don't know how to do that in light of this. Will you help me navigate it? And when you've got your act together, that leads to a great conversation. What I found was that one of the top ones that I get feedback on in the book is a young lady who there was an expectation in her dorm room or apartment or whatever that they kind of hung out together, that was kind of the vision and dream of kind of being in this dorm room setting, but everybody was ships in the night, was going so fast, there was really no hang time. So one of the win this and that's was when everybody has work to do at home, we're all going to go somewhere together, whether it be a coffee shop or whatever, and sit around each other and do it, just so we can kind of be around and still have some inside laughs and hang time in the midst of chaos, right?
Sure.
So that was a big one in the book that we talked about, was like, how do you make room for your friends and building relationships as part of the college experience and take on a bunch of responsibilities, especially in ministry? And it's like, how do you build a recipe when this happens, when everybody's redlining? How do we carve out time for us that doesn't just create more work later? Like, how can we do work together?
Yeah. So you, and then there's, but you would schedule your free time until that point,
For sure.
right? And I think, I've seen Kerry schedule his block scheduling thing. It's an oxymoron to some people. How do you schedule free time? I don't get it. It's free time.
Yeah.
I don't schedule, but you do. Do you do that? How do you fit that in? The free time and replenishing part, right? Because you need that.
Yep. So I'm always somewhat helpful here. I mean, just to be honest. So I work out. I schedule that. I schedule family time. I have no hobbies. I got a mountain bike. I've ridden it a couple times, but it's during my workout slot. I mean, I'm just being honest. So, like, I don't currently have any, like, veg time or free time. Right. So my free time is either family time or I don't use that. I just fill it up with other stuff. So I'm probably not the best. Like, if I showed you my calendar, you'd be like, what do you do? Like, you work all the time. It's like, I kind of love what I do, and I do that in family. That's all I do. But I think there's value in scheduling it and protecting it. There is nothing wrong with saying, I've got something scheduled this evening, and that scheduled thing is family time or time with friends. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But we've convinced ourselves that that is optional time, that that's time we'd like to have, but maybe it won't happen. And so scheduling that time in there, I am scheduled during that time to be doing something. And it's my choice in that moment to say whether I'm going to do that or not. I'm either going to have dinner with my family or not. I'm going to hang out with my friends or not. But when you don't schedule it, here's the problem. If you don't fully schedule out your routine and understand what you do, you have lots of white space. And when you have white space on a calendar, when somebody says, do you have time? The truthful and honest answer is, yes, I have time. And I don't know where all of it's going, and I don't know where I've missed. I'll tell you, one of my biggest things is if I move a basketball schedule, so I missed Micah's. So scheduled on my calendar. I was going to Micah's game, and then it got moved, and that didn't work because I was flying. And so when I saw that, I went ahead when I was traveling during my little 15-minute carve-out time to have that call. I looked to see when his next game was to see if I needed to start now shuffling something else because I don't want to miss 2 games in a row. Like, I don't want to do that. So it's like, how do I make room or adjust? So once again, it's all about fallout. When you schedule on your calendar, when something evades that time and you have to move family time somewhere, what you'll find is that there's nowhere else to move it to. If you choose to do this, then you don't get to do that. So that's why I told you, Andy, when I travel, I work the entire time I'm gone. I'm like, let's do this. Who do you want me to meet with? What do you want me to do? Because I don't do that at home. Like, I don't. The answer to the question of like, hey, could you go out for dinner? We'll have speakers travel in for us a lot to record videos or do stuff. And the answer more than often is no. I'd absolutely love to hang out with these people, but I can't because that's my family block time, right? I've got limited time to work with. So understanding the fallout of your choices is really, really critical, including adding some hang time because you're just maxed out. As a college student, at some point your brain just stops, right? You're like, I can stare at this all day, but nothing's going to make progress. Right. That's fine. Move your work time and say, I'm putting some free time here, but you got to move your work time to some time. It's got to show up.
Right. Yeah, you can't just reduce the amount of work time.
That's exactly right. It's like, I'm going to do it faster later.
Right.
Like
not going to happen.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Let's touch on this no to-do list thing.
Yep.
That was hard. I tried it. So if you guys haven't, you guys want more of this, you could jump in on a Facebook Live group with you. How do you get in touch with that real quick?
Just mythobalance.com. You can go there and sign up for it, and there's videos and Just we hang out.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So I was doing that a little bit, and I heard this no to-do list thing, and I tried it.
Yep.
And I didn't try it for very long. It was very hard to put everything on my calendar and give it time. Because there's so many little things, 5-minute things here and there. Help me, what am I doing wrong? How do I do a better job at getting those 5-minute things on my calendar in a row?
Yep.
Or not in a row, or however it works.
Sure. So let's be honest. Many of you have a weekly meeting that you have to attend of some kind, whether it be a class or some kind of meeting. We could all say it's an hour meeting because that's what's on the calendar. Most of us would agree that that meeting could be done in approximately 17 minutes. Like, we talk a lot and we aren't very efficient, and we could get more done than we think. I want to use that as an example because when online calendars were first created, Palm Pilots and things like that, everything was built into 15-minute increments. Like, that was natural. It was unnatural to go less than that. You can't even view it right. It like looks wrong on your calendar to go smaller than that. So for a long time, I went smaller than that. I was like, I'm just going to buck the system. This is a 3-minute phone call, and I'm going to get off, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. I realized, first of all, anything under 5 minutes is foolishness. It's just a waste of time. But what I found out was that everything should be able to fit in a block. And what I found was that I had a 30-minute block set aside to get this done. I'm going to go ahead and throw this in that 30-minute block, and I still got everything done. And so suddenly what I realized was that, I scheduled 30 minutes for this, but when I had some other things to do, and so literally my subject line will say, follow up with Andy, send this email, do this. It's just one run-on sentence. Like, it just has to be helpful for me, right? Not everybody else. And so I literally would fill it in and be like, can I squeeze this in on a block that's already established? Because usually by the time those little things are starting to show up, I'm already into the week and it's scheduled out, right? So Elon Musk schedules out in 5-minute increments out his entire day. Gary Vaynerchuk, same thing, 5-minute increments all throughout his day. Cool, whatever. They both also have somebody standing beside them that tells them when they need to do the next thing. I don't have that. Andy, would you like to do that for me? Could you help me do that? I'm just kidding. That would be horrible.
I consider it.
It sounds horrible. Not being around you that much, Andy, that doesn't sound horrible. Just the idea. But here's what I found was that I scheduled something for an hour, and I could work 2 5-minute things in that hour too and still get done the other stuff. And so what I found was that I started, for the longest time, I would overestimate what I could get done in time. But as I found my routine, I started swinging the other way and knew that because of interruptions and things, everything takes a little bit longer. You get distracted on things. And so here's what becomes life-giving, okay? What starts as, this mundane. Somebody asked me the other day, I fired out this tweet, kind of zinger. They said, what do you say to the person that says that you're a slave to your calendar? And I said, I'd rather be a slave to my calendar than a slave to your chaos. And so I was like, I can run around with my head cut off like you do it, but that doesn't sound fun to me at all. I'd rather have my calendar. But here's the win. Once you find your rhythm of a calendar and you know how to do it, and you start to just, it becomes natural. It really does become really natural. It takes about 6 weeks to start to estimate your time correctly because you're always overestimating everything. Once you get into a rhythm, you start to get a little joy, just like you do of checking off a task. You know, it feels good when you're making progress in the task list, right? You start to get joy when you start moving things from the future into your current day because you're killing it. And suddenly, I literally a few weeks ago, this happened to me, I finished my day at 3 o'clock on my calendar and did not know what to do next. And that rarely ever happens. But I was kind of like, I've already pulled 2 things from Friday. It was on a Thursday, and I literally thought to myself, maybe I'll go mountain biking. That would be fun. And it was raining, so that didn't sound like fun once I looked outside the window. But I was like, now what do I do? And you know what I did? I took the box at the bottom that said family time, drug it up, and went home. And I don't normally, don't get me wrong, I'm not a superstar. I don't normally do that. Like, that's not normal. But I gave myself permission to go, I'm on it. I've got my stuff going. I'm figuring it out. So logistically, put it in a box. Like, set aside hour increments of time, however you choose to do it, and start to learn where you can weave these things in. And you'll find that all of us are wasting so much time. I'll tell you a funny insurance story. It's funny to me. It may not be funny to you. Insurance story. So here's what happened. We would do like cold call, like phone calls for business, right? We would call businesses trying to give a quote on their workers' compensation insurance. This is not fun. Most people don't want to talk to you, and they hang up on you. We're literally making phone calls. This is not fun, right? But we're good at it. And we knew once we actually helped somebody, we would save them lots of money and help them. Like, we were very good at what we did, so we believed in it. I saw a pattern, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. Guys would get like 1 or 2 really good connections in a day. And I would be like, man, you made like 100 phone calls. Did that make people not answer? What happened? And they were doing something that I thought was a sales thing, and I quickly discovered it's what all of us do. All of us do this. Somebody got on the phone and was very affirming. Yes, we actually were talking about that the other day. Let me get you transferred over to my boss. You talk to the boss. You're like, awesome. Let's set an appointment for next week. It feels good. You know what happens as soon as that phone call ends? We stand up. We're excited. We have adrenaline. Next thing we do, we go get coffee. After we go to the bathroom, and we tell 3 people what we just did, and then we go and sit back down. That phone call connection cost me 15 minutes. Every time a good call was made, we lost time. It was the weirdest pattern in the world. And what I found is that when we have something good happening in our life in a regular day, even if it's a small win, we want to stop and tell someone.
It's true.
And yet that's some of our best time to actually crank out some more stuff. Our synapses are firing. We're fresh. We're energized. We're like, bring on the world. Like, we're ready. It's like in basketball. Once you get flowing and you start making shots, like, give that guy the ball. He's in a rhythm, right? Yeah. Give him the ball. And what we keep doing is literally, picture this. In our lives, what we're doing is we make a basket and we call ourselves out of the game. And we go sit down and we're like, okay, I'm cooled off now. I'm completely out of rhythm. Awesome. Let me get back in this game. It doesn't make sense. When we do something good in a class or we do something good on a test, we want to like treat ourselves. So I started doing something weird. Guys, I know all this can be a little overwhelming and weird, but when I fly, you guys know when you fly, they have all the new movies on there. There's all kinds of great movies to watch. I only let myself watch them on the way back. And I make a rule of what I do on the way over. And so I've actually turned the TVs on the back of the Delta headrest as a reward system for me. To say, okay, right now, when I got on the plane on Sunday night, I did not want to work. I wanted to watch something stupid on the TV screen, right? That's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch this movie on the way back and not worry about it at all. I'm going to go ahead and knock out these 3 things, send these emails, do this stuff, whatever I got to do on the way over. And so it became a reward for me because then all of a sudden, before I know it, I'm getting ahead of stuff. I'm on top of it.
I have to ask you this last question because I know we're about over time here, but you seem like what people would call a very disciplined person, right? You make up rules for yourself for the airplane ride back and all this stuff. And your calendar, it's just amazing, but I can't, I'm not that disciplined, right? And I would say that, no, you're just not that motivated. Like the person who would say, I can't, I'm not as disciplined as Frank. I'd say, no, you're just not motivated. You know what I'm saying? This is completely off script. We didn't talk about this. Can you help us get motivated to do the daily discipline of our calendar right? You see what I'm saying? Motivate me to get this done, because 6 weeks is a long time before we figure it out. You got to stick to it. It's probably why I didn't give it enough time, right, to get actually into a better rhythm with it. So how do I get motivated? What's going to motivate me to go do this more regularly? And tell people I can't right now, or I've got a thing, or all this stuff. I'm going to keep talking until you find what you're looking for on there.
Yeah, I just need to look up a scripture real quick.
Yeah, that's good. Scripture's good. You guys, afterwards, you can buy this book. It's in the back. It's $16, which is a slight savings from Amazon. Unless you're a student, then it's only $8. So, right? And college students are broke. We're going to give this to you for $8. So just head back there afterwards in just a second, and you can get this. And again, everything you talked about in here, right?
Yeah, including the big thing that the book does that I didn't already offer you is I started building out these formulas and found there's lots of flaws. You can actually make these things work against you and cause problems. Like you cannot think through them the right way. And so really, I taught you the first half of the book, if not a little bit more. it's really the last part where it forces you to go into some exercises. It actually helps you avoid the pitfalls of doing this wrong to where it becomes a burden instead of a help. And so that's what's in there. All right, so let me answer this question of like, what do you do? I'm not as disciplined as you or whatever. Cool, whatever. That's fine. I would say two things. Take it out of the discipline category for a minute and put it in the stewardship category. God has called you to do this, and you're either stewarding your time well or you're not. I think time is a stewardship just like money. And I'd say so if we were talking to the budgeter, and they're like, I can't get my finances in order, what would you say? Get a budget. And they're like, well, I don't do well with budgets. You would say, no, you have to have a budget. You don't have a choice. Like, there's no other way to manage your finances. You have to know it, or just make a lot of money. That's your two choices. And if one ain't working, then get a budget. And so we would say to the person, no matter what their personality type or how they're wired, you got to have a budget to make this work. Yep. All I did was offer you a budget for your time. I'm just trying to show you how to manage it because I believe it's a stewardship issue. Paul says this in 1 Corinthians 15. I want to read it in one translation, one paraphrase. 15:10, I think. Yeah. But by the grace of God, I am what I am, and his grace to me was not without effect. No, I worked harder than all of them, yet not I, but the grace of God within me. Listen to the Message paraphrase of this. It's fascinating to me. But because God was so gracious, so very generous, here I am. And I'm not about to let his grace go to waste. And this idea that somehow in God redeeming me and moving through my life and all that he's done, all that he's kept me from, the pain he's kept me from, if it's some way I could be wasting his grace, that's compelling. Yeah. Like, that makes me want to do better with my time. Yep. And I'll tell you this, I wasn't always wired this way. It's not how I was not organized. I was the kid with like the binder with the papers like coming out of the binder while he's walking. He's like, I lost my assignment. It's like down the street, like blowing down like that was me. And all I know is that if this is stewardship, and if we're really saying that there's a possibility we could waste the grace that God's given us, I'm not about that. And I'm going to do whatever I can to avoid that. And if part of that is me saying, God, you've given me whatever time you've given me on this earth, and I really think you've called me to help other leaders and serve leaders, I've got to do that well. And for me, it's less of a challenge with finances and more a challenge of time, right? And so when I read scripture like that, I'm just like, we're in a marathon. We've got to figure out a way to manage this for the long haul. And yet, every opportunity is a great opportunity. And I don't want to get to a place where, as most leaders will do, over 50% of leaders that go into full-time ministry will quit in the first 5 years. That's the latest stat. Yep. It's heartbreaking. I think it has more to do with this than it has to do with their call to ministry or their love for Jesus. Absolutely. I think they can't figure out the sporadic. I think that's the problem. They don't know how to manage it. They don't know how to manage the demands of their spouse or their parents, or how to navigate those conversations around how they're managing their time. And what our response as the church, for the most part, has been to people that have struggled with their time is to say, do better or work harder. And I don't think that's helpful enough. Yep,
that's so good. So in other words, the motivation is if you want to be an effective, impactful ministry for a long time, you might want to figure this out. Yeah. That's awesome. Let's thank Frank for being here, you guys. Thanks so much. Yeah. Thank you. We've got a couple more institutes, maybe 3 or 4 this semester, so we'll see you back here when those are. Just check the website. Be sure to grab a book on the back on the way out. Thanks for coming.